summarize text number 69. 69. So, and here Sanskrit goes, Yanisha sarabhutanam tashyam jagati samyami yashyam jagrati bhutani sanisha pashato mune. Translation. What is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. Purport by Sri Prabhupada. There are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage or thoughtful man are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the so-called nights of the materialistic man. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reactions. Again, the verse was Yanisha Savabhutanam Tashyam Gyakati Samyami Yashyam Gyakrati Bhutani Sanisha Pashato Mune. What is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. So this is a somewhat allegorical verse here, which with the meaning is somewhat obvious, and it actually describes probably the greatest divide that goes down through human society, probably the greatest division of human beings. There are, of course, many divisions. There are divisions, political divisions of right and left, the divisions of, the poor and the rich, divisions of young and old, men and women, races and like that, different divisions like that. And there seem to be very, very great differences, but at least from my observation, this is actually the greatest divide that goes down through human society. And it puts on different names, but you can sometimes talk about those who are religious and those who are not religious. And that seems to be, this is just different names for this, in one sense, the same thing. But that is, at least, the greatest. The two classes of people simply live in two different worlds, practically. What is night for one is day for the other, and vice versa. This is what the verse talks about here. It's an allegorical. It's not that. I actually had someone once asked me a question about this verse, and he said he read something in the Gita that actually the self-realized soul, he sees light at night or something like that. What does that mean? But actually, this is just an allegorical. They live in it's two different world views we're talking about here, and thus, what is day for one? What one class of people consider this is important, this has value, this is something we want to strive for. The others say this is just has no value whatsoever. This is just illusory. There's no, this is just dream, fantasy. No interest in that. Absolutely no interest. And vice versa. This is actually, And these two class people are often so different, they cannot even communicate, they don't speak the same language. Seemingly it's the same language, same words, but what they mean by the words, actually they just, they don't just speak past each other, and their opinions of each other are also, like the materialistic people will consider those who are dealing with spiritual, this is just, just fantasy, dreaming, it's belief, blind belief, or superstition, or wasting their time. Why don't they do something instead of enjoy life instead? Do something concrete, work, get ahead in society, get some money, get some, and get a house, get a position, find yourself a girlfriend, a boyfriend, have some fun. Life is meant for enjoying, and life, so you cannot just waste your time in these few years you're living, and sitting there and praying or something like, it's, and the other, if you take the other side, for those who are cultivating spiritual life, they're seeing materialistic people are simply living in great illusion. They are working hard for absolutely nothing that will give them any kind of satisfaction, nothing that will have, there's no substance to it. It will not give them any satisfaction now. The only reward that you get from materialistic activity is the hard work that you're performing, and the sweat on your brow. But there's no satisfaction. It's simply insubstantial. It doesn't, and you cannot. It doesn't give satisfaction here and now. Actually, it gives just great frustration. And what's the benefit when you leave the body? It's what's the benefit? We had, like when a wealthy person dies, like for example, was it 2 years ago, the wealthiest man in Denmark, he died. Everyone knows who I'm talking about. So, does anyone know how much did he leave behind? Exactly. How much did he leave behind? Someone knows. Someone doesn't know how much he left behind. Well then, I'll ask you another question. How much did he bring with him? So then you know how much he left behind. He left everything behind. Didn't get anything with him. And who knows where he is now? That's a So he was basically just wasting his life for absolutely nothing. That's what the spiritualist will see. You'll see, and here of course the word is used, self-realized. And that's what actually this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita has been. It's kind of an introduction to the book. And there the first point is actually, there is a self to realize. There is actually a self to realize. That's the first thing we have to understand. Who are we? Who are we? And materialistic people just take it for granted, there's not even point of wasting time. It's obvious who I am. I'm a man, I'm a woman, and I have these years, and have to, I should just, somehow or other get the best out of this short life. I should enjoy, and enjoyment means, somehow or other, I'm basically this body, and the body should be kept as healthy and strong as possible, and then the situation should just be nice as possible. For me, if one's a little more broad-minded, for others also, we should have win-win situations. I should be happy, and others should also be happy. And happy means, just nice situation, nice, peace, and lots of, good food and different enjoyments. Of course, different people have different kinds of enjoyments, but it's meant for enjoying, and basically enjoying means some other pleasure for this body. So there's not even any point in talking, that's what life is meant for. Why waste time on anything else? But this is not what the Bhagavad Gita starts with. Actually says there is a self to realize, and the self is different from the body. The self is different from the body, and that's explained very much in detail in the beginning, because that's actually the basis of spiritual life and self-realization, that there is actually a self. And therefore Krishna, he goes in detail and he explains, how the body is always changing, but the self, actually the I that is within the body, is unchangingly the same. It's an obvious point, and it's sometimes amazing that very learned people don't even see it or overlook it. I have experience. Of course, I overlooked it. Then, when actually it was explained to me, then it's obvious. Of course, I am the conscious I within, and I don't change. But the body is always changing. I'm the same conscious I that I was when as far as back as I can remember. I can remember something like, I have a vague image of some lying in the pram. So that must be 2-3 years old or younger. But that's very vague. But like 4 or 5 years back, I can remember, it's me. And when I was 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 and so on, I am, it's me all the time, sitting here and observing, being conscious and so on, inside the body. But the body is definitely changing. Like it is obvious. It's obvious to everyone. And as the body gets older, one notices, the body is not able to do the same thing it was when it was young. Especially old people will notice when they reach beyond 70, 75, 80 like that, then the body really starts compared to what it was. Like Prabhupada himself was using that example, that when he was a young man, I think it was when they went to Jagannath Puri, a town on the east coast of India, and he went there with some of his disciples, and he told how he came there when he was a young man, and how he went swimming in the waves. It's by the beach, and he was out there swimming and these jumping in the waves and jumping around like that. But now he couldn't do it. He still had the desire, he would actually like to do it, but he couldn't. That's what happens when one gets an old body. But it's still the same I within the body. So actually, that means that the self must be different from the body. So who is that self? This is what self-realization is all about, to understand who is that self. And actually, how does a self really become happy? Because that's a thing that is common to all. I'm talking about this, there's this great divide going down through human society. But one thing everyone has in common, that is the desire to be happy. Everyone really wants to be happy, and no one wants to be miserable. So the question is, if we're not this body, if we are selves, how do we become happy? Happiness cannot come through the body when one realizes that. It will be something like, since similarly I'm not these clothes, so happiness doesn't come from, being nice to my clothes. I don't feel anything, but it doesn't make any difference to me. What happens to the clothes. It's just my dress, and the body is actually similar. The satisfaction given to the body doesn't really satisfy me at all. It's not the source of happiness. Happiness comes from a different source. So what is it that gives real happiness? This is actually what Bhagavad Gita is about. It's the knowledge about the self. Actually, there is a self. That the self is spiritual, different from the body. The self is eternal. The self is living before this body. Must be, because we wouldn't say this body, we could say which body. In this lifetime we had so many bodies: the childhood body, the young body, the adult body, old body. So we have already we just going through different bodies. So logically, we must also have existed before this particular lifetime. And we must also continue existing after the death, of the last body within this span of life. So we must be eternal. Eternal must be that we are, have always existed and will always exist beyond time. Which is also, in one sense, pretty amazing when one thinks about it. It's mystical. It's don't even try to understand it logically, how it's possible, because even though we like to understand things logically, we should want to understand things logically and rational. It's because we are rational beings. But also, there are things which simply cannot be grasped logically, but which just have to be accepted, not in faith, but just as a matter of fact. One can observe this, it is like that. And that most, in one sense, illogical or mystical thing is that I am existing. It is a very mystical thing that I am existing. So, but there's no question of doubting it, because how can you doubt you exist? We do exist, and also we can very quickly find out actually we must be eternal. It's very, very little contemplation on this constant, unchanging nature of the self, and we'll immediately understand that I am eternal. But don't ask me how or why. But you can see we are eternal conscious beings. And actually from realizing or finding out this amazing fact, actually nothing in existence is more amazing. Is too amazing to be true. Just such as God's existence. Someone will say that God, how can there be a God? How can God exist? Or if he exists, everything comes from him. So where does he come from? Someone will say. It's in one sense God's existence is not more amazing than my existence. And maybe I can doubt God's existence, but I cannot doubt my own existence. Of course, someone will do that, but that's, the fact that you doubt it proves you exist. That's, and it was even one French philosopher that was how he concluded, he reasons. He tried to doubt everything. So, and actually you can't doubt everything. I can even doubt you here. You might just be some, imagination or, or some illusion played in front of my eyes. I can doubt everything when it comes down to it, but I cannot doubt that I'm doubting. And therefore, and since I'm doubting, therefore I must exist. So you cannot doubt that. And from there, then actually one can, then he built up a whole system of philosophy. From there, actually you can ultimately deduce the existence of God from this fact that I am existing. This is actually also what is there in both Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, in Vedanta Sutra. You can go from the realization of yourself to existence of God, because the self is a part of something. The self is not the complete whole. Of course, because sometimes one would think that I am everything there is, but that we will also quickly realize, because if I was everything and I was the controller and and nothing happened, which was which I'm not in control of, and which I don't want, but that's not reality. There's there's so many unwanted things are constantly coming to us, being pushed upon us. Like, for example, that we become old, we become diseased. Who wants that? All kinds, so we get all kinds of unpleasant things happening to us all the time. We hope everyone is nice to us, but some people are very nasty to us, or don't appreciate us, or whatever. And this actually, the world is basically filled up with all kinds of things going on, which I really don't want to happen, but they're happening anyway. This is why This is why we're always complaining. Complaining means we are not God. Things are happening and we cannot do anything about it, and we wish we could, but it goes against our desires. We're small. Suffering is coming to us. We do not want suffering, but it's coming nevertheless. That means we must be small. And a small thing is a part of a greater thing. So what is the nature of that greater thing, or that whole that we are a part of? That's the next question, philosophical question one can ask in self-realization. And the answer is, well, that we are part of must be of the same nature that we have. Or at least that nature that we have must be found in the complete whole. Just like simple examples are that if you take a sun ray, if you just analyze a sun ray is composed of heat and light. But then you can conclude that the source of the sun ray must also have heat and light. Or if you have a drop of ocean water, and then you analyze this drop, and then you find the salt in this drop, then actually it's reasonable to conclude that the ocean must have salt. Because how could the drop have salt if the ocean didn't have it? So, similarly, if we are part of something greater, and we are persons, conscious, eternal persons, then that part, that whole that we are part of, must also have the quality of being a person, conscious, eternal. So that's God. That's actually simple realization of God, logical realization of God. And happiness for the part that we are, since we are part of God, must be to have a relationship to the whole. A part naturally functions in a relationship to a whole, which means, like for example, a hand, my hand here, functions naturally in relationship to the whole body, and by serving the whole body, then the hand also gets satisfaction. That's a standard example often given, that the hand doesn't eat by itself. The hand eats by taking food, giving it to the mouth, it goes down to the stomach, and then the energy is, transported to the whole body, including the hand. So the hand can only get nourished by serving the body, serving the whole body, and it gets its nourishment also. And we similarly are, according to Bhagavad Gita, according to Krishna, we are, can only derive happiness if we are giving happiness to God, to Krishna. We call God Krishna, and he's speaking here. And this is actually how we become happy. And our attempt to satisfy ourselves, this is actually what is the source of all our frustration. This is actually why we do not get the happiness that we want, even though we are trying very hard. In one sense, this is kind of in a nutshell, the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. And many more details are there. But as we see in this particular verse here, this is why there's two classes of people. The spiritualist, the self-realized soul, or the self-controlled sage, he sees that those who are ignorant of their spiritual self, they are living in an illusion, thinking that their material bodies and material things will give them happiness. So they are working very, very hard for that, and therefore they engage in different kinds of economic development and different materialistic plans, how to increase their different kinds of enjoyments, and they develop different kinds of science and technology and so on. But since it's all based on ignorance of the self, for the self-realized soul, this is just darkness, and it has no meaning. It's the self-realized soul will see that, okay, so the materialists, you see materialists, they are they have their big planning commissions, and it's very, very important. And there's big issues. There's a crisis. There's an economical crisis, and whatever. And it's very, very critical. And still, as I say, this is just has no meaning. Doesn't make any difference. Doesn't make any difference. And of course, also vice versa. But as property formalists here, I mean, it's not that it's all. It's not that they both are right. Actually, those materialists actually are in illusion. They are actually, and they are mistaken about who they are. But they're very convinced. Generally, materialists are convinced about the material advancement. But again, that's darkness. That's night according to the Bhagavad Gita. So the message of the Bhagavad Gita basically is to also become a self-realized, self-controlled sage. It's something that is available for everyone. Bhagavad Gita is we might hear when we read here about self-realized sages and so on. Sounds like someone living in a mountain cave somewhere in the Himalayas, and something very, very far from us, and something not practical at all for our lifestyle. But this is not really what Bhagavad Gita is teaching. Bhagavad Gita is actually a very practical book. It's a book where Arjuna is a great warrior and completely entangled in a situation, a material situation, and he wants to withdraw because he thinks this cannot be auspicious for him. This will only cause misfortune to be engaged in this terrible war that he's about to enter. And the whole teaching of Bhagavad Gita is what Krishna is teaching Arjuna is it's not a matter of the situation you have to change. You have to remain in the situation. This is just your nature. By your nature, you are a soldier, and you cannot go against what is in nature, but you have to change your consciousness. You have to change the consciousness, the understanding by which you base your actions on. That has to be completely changed. From trying to satisfy yourself, that's what Arjuna's position is in the beginning. He wants to see how can I get some happiness out of this. And as he looks at it, he says, I cannot get any happiness. If it's, whether I win the war or lose the war, I don't see any good coming out of this. Because if I lose the war, how can that be happiness? And if I win the war, but I'm fighting against my own family. So how can I become happy by killing my own family? I don't see anything good coming out of this. And therefore his conclusion is, well, the only thing is to just withdraw and go to the mountains and become a sage. But Krishna says this is not, first of all, it's not correct of you to do this. It's actually a duty to fight here. You have a duty to fight. And second of all, you cannot even do that. It's not your nature. You have a completely different nature. And if you went to the mountains, you just fight with someone else, because you are a warrior. Not that he is a belligerent, like someone who likes to fight, but Arjuna is a very righteous person who fights for justice. And if he would see injustice, he would see mistreatment or weak or strong misusing their power against the weak and exploiting and so on. Arjuna would be there and say, stop. Not in the presence of son of Pandu, I'm the son of Pandu,